Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear viewers and listeners, Assalamu alaikum. Today's question is a sequel to my earlier question that why do majority of mankind worship the jinn? So today's question is, if Satan is so powerful, then how can a believer pass the test of life? I mean, this is logical because anyone who is a reader of the glorious Quran can figure out that on numerous occasions the glorious Quran confirms that Satan, who is a jinn, and his progeny, they have, or they are very powerful. They've got enormous power. So mankind should remain careful so that they may not become, trapped in their allurement. So, in order to overcome the shortcoming of the mankind in front of Satan, the jinn, Allah Almighty has set a very generous and equitable scoring system. And that generous and equitable scoring system is also coupled with mercy of Lord of the universe, that is Allah Almighty. So regarding mercy of the Lord of the universe, verse 54 of chapter 6 confirms this fact in the following words: your Lord has prescribed mercy for himself. So, it is a great solace for majority of the believers that since Allah Almighty has taken upon himself to be merciful, so there is a very high probability that large number of believers may benefit from this mercy of Allah Almighty. And this mercy aspect that is very well embedded in the whole system of reward and punishment is reinforced from a different perspective in verses 14 to 16 of chapter 92 in the following verse. Allah Almighty says, I have warned you of a fierce blaze. None will burn in it except the very wicked, he who denies and turns away. So this is a confirmation to the fact that since Allah Almighty has taken upon himself to be merciful, so only a hardened sinner, a hardened disbeliever, one who disbelieves in the verses of Allah Almighty, one who disbelieves in the scriptures of Allah Almighty on the judgment day, and Allah Almighty himself will burn in this fire. So regarding the nature of mankind, that they should not complain about the enormous power of Satan. Allah Almighty only demands that you should remain loyal to your Creator. And Allah Almighty says that I'm not interested in punishing mankind for the sake of punishment. And this fact is reinforced in verse 147 of chapter 4 in the following words. What would God accomplish by your punishment? If you have given thanks and have believed, God is appreciative and cognizant. So it means mankind should remain thankful to Allah Almighty, and they must believe in Allah Almighty on the judgment day, and of course the verses and scriptures of Allah Almighty. So this is the bare minimum. So anyone who is steadfast on these bare minimum, he or she stands a fair chance to get salvation on the judgment day. Before I elaborate the scoring system prescribed by Allah Almighty, first of all, we need to understand that who is a believer in the sight of Allah Almighty. So believer is a person who is a strict monotheist. He or she never indulges in any type of polytheistic practice. And we know that there could be numerous examples given in the glorious Quran, and the list may start from praising and worshipping messengers, saints, angels, and so on and so on. It should be strict monotheism. The only praise, the all praise is for Allah Almighty. The only entity that is, worthy of worship is Allah Almighty and nobody else. And second is belief on the judgment day. So as a believer, we must know that there will be one day when we will be made accountable before, again, Lord of the universe and nobody else, Allah Almighty. And third aspect that is very important for a believer is that he should strive to do good deeds and tries to avoid bad deeds as far as humanly possible. So any person who is a strict monotheist, who believes on the judgment day, and of course he strives to do the good deeds and tries to avoid the bad deeds, can be declared a believer in the presence of logic provided by glorious Quran. So I mean, these three are the fundamentals that we need to keep in mind. Now, coming back to the scoring system, the generous scoring system, the equitable scoring system that Allah Almighty has set. There are numerous verses in the glorious Quran that elaborate upon that scoring system. First, I'm going to refer to verse 160 of chapter 6 that reads, "Whoever comes up with a good deed will have 10 times its like, and whoever comes up with an evil deed will be repaid only with its equivalent. They will not be wronged." So, I mean, this system appears to be so generous. So, if somebody has committed a sin, it will only be counted as one sin. But if somebody has performed a good deed, the reward may be 10 times. So, hypothetically, if we assume that in terms of potency, if the evil deed and the good deed have the same potency level, so it means your one good deed can neutralize the effect of 10 evil deeds of the same potency level. So, I mean, the system is so generous. You need to keep this fact in mind. I'm trying to express it in mathematical terms for better comprehension. Now, there's another verse that throws light on, this generous and equitable scoring system set by Almighty. And this is verse 37 of chapter 34 that reads, "It is neither your wealth nor your children that bring you closer to us, but it is he who believes and does good deeds," as I've explained earlier. "These will have a multiple reward for what they did, and they will reside in the chambers in peace and security." So this verse confirms the fact. Earlier verse is highlighting the 10 times reward. It says multiple. Now multiple could be even 15 times, 5 times, 20 times, 30 times, because Allah's mercy is infinite. So multiple could have a very wider connotation that we cannot probably comprehend as a human being. So again, it shows that the scoring system is very generous. It's very, very relaxed system whereby even an ordinary believer with a little bit of effort can make sure that he or she will get salvation on the judgment day. But it doesn't stop here. There's another beautiful verse in the glorious Quran that goes a step further. It is verse 261 of chapter 2. It reads, "The parable of those who spend their wealth in God's way is that of a grain that produces 7 spikes. In each spike is 100 grains. God multiplies for whom he wills. God is bounteous and knowing." So, I mean, if a believer spends his wealth in the cause of Allah Almighty, and there could be 101 ways to spend your wealth to please Allah Almighty, the reward is 700 times. So, I mean, with 700 times reward for spending your wealth in the cause of Allah, with multiple reward for other good deeds, with 10 times reward for other good deeds. So, I mean, it is highly unlikely that a believer who believes in one God, who worships one God, and of course who believes on the judgment day, he or she may suffer on the judgment day. No. There's a very least probability for that. So, in the light of the wisdom provided by these verses of the glorious Quran, what we can conclude is that Allah's scoring system is generous to an extent that human beings cannot comprehend. And it is also equitable. It is fair. And just to supplement this generous scoring system, Allah Almighty's mercy is infinite. That has already encompassed everything, and on the judgment it will encompass, all the bad deeds of the believers. And this fact is reinforced in verse 16 of chapter 6 of the glorious Quran in the following words: "Whoever is spared on that day," that is the judgment day, "he had mercy on him," Allah Almighty's mercy on him. That is the clear victory. So it means if as believers we strive to do good deeds and tries to avoid bad deeds as far as humanly possible, so we know that there are multiple 10 times and of course 700 times rewards. But above all, we know that Allah Almighty has taken upon himself to be merciful, and on the judgment day he is going to show his infinite mercy to all the believers who Allah Almighty knows that they strive with good intention, although the outcomes may not be according to our expectations, because There could be multiple reasons for that. Everything is not in control within of human beings, but Allah Almighty knows our intentions. So there is a very less probability that a true believer may not receive salvation on the judgment day and may be deprived of the reward of paradise. Anyway, I conclude my today's monologue with a prayer that Allah Almighty may bless this effort and enable us to apply reason and seek guidance only from the glorious Quran in all walks of life. Please do subscribe and share my channel for promoting teachings of the glorious Quran. May Allah Almighty reward your efforts. Amen. Thank you for watching.